and it likes it on the studio. And we'll see if it shows up on YouTube itself. I don't see it yet myself. Oh, you showed up. Can you hear me?
Howdy, kids. Welcome to the first of the Football Diehards Ask Me Anything videos. We do these all the time in the season. I'll be doing them on the regular. Every week I'll be doing these, usually on Saturdays. We'll figure out the schedule as we get a little closer to the season. This time of year, I'm doing them kind of whenever I have a chance, like right now. We'll be doing other videos. If you missed it yesterday, we had a free square video, a sleeper, basically, throwing out some sleepers. And we always talk about these things, sleepers and whatnot. There are no sleepers anymore, right? We're all so well informed. We know what time it is. We know what's going on. We're looking for, undervalued commodities, players that maybe you can, we call them free square players, players that you can get very late. And if they don't work out, you draft them and move on. So check that video out on the site, by the way. If you're, we'll see some of you coming in now, I'll give everybody a chance. If you have questions, put them in the chat. I'll get to them. Answer them the best I can, kind of discuss things and give you my thoughts on what, on the situations you bring up, and feel free to hit me back, argue, and be contentious or not. Totally agree with me. Many do, many don't. Just back from the King's Class. The fantasy community came out and big time, and it was a really good time. So enjoyed that immensely. And been doing a lot of drafts, a lot of best balls. I'm sure many of you have as well. A lot of regular drafting. Just did my first auction, salary cap draft at the King's Classic. That was a lot of fun. I did much better than I usually do, because usually I'm an emotional wreck. I try to price enforce. I'm doing all kinds of things that are not wise to do in that format. You'll find, but I've learned lessons over the 4 years. I'd be happy to share those with you. So if you're here, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell as well. That helps us out, and the comments help us out too. So looking forward to some questions. There's some newsy items today. There's newsy items every day, right? The latest is Gil Brandt of NFL.com talked to Dak Prescott. Prescott says he plans to start week 1. I didn't know there was a different plan. So he hasn't played yet. We know the shoulder issue has been ongoing. Kind of, coming off the ankle injury was horrible last year. hurt himself against the Giants week 5, and then boom, it was all over. So he's rehabbed nicely from that, but he overdid it with the shoulder, the throwing shoulder early in the warm-ups, a strained latissimus muscle, they say. He's had multiple MRIs to keep advantage. I know some people are reading a lot into that because the Cowboys threw out there, oh, wow, he is having another MRI, but it's all okay. Well, normally people don't get MRIs if everything's all okay, but I think in the case of a quarterback where you just invested $160 million, it's probably not that weird. But it is a concern, right? I mean, we'd like to see him play a little bit. We'd like to see him whole. I'm investing heavily in him. I don't know. How about you all? So it makes interesting time. Hit me up with questions here. That's what we're here for. You could ask me anything. Football questions are best. Other questions, maybe I can work something out for you. Cats, music, probably my strengths. Beyond that, football is what I'm here to discuss. If you haven't been to the site lately, our August update draft guide is up and available to you. Goes part of our premium content along with the flash update that runs throughout the course of the regular season. Tons of content producers there involved in that, doing a great job. So, and the video content will be once again a big part of what we do throughout the season. I'll be doing the weekly injury reports, etc. So I don't know if you guys have been drafting much. I would love to hear from you if you have whatever your questions are. In the drafts I've been in, running backs have been the thing. I'll get to that one once. Oh, when and if would I draft Drew Lock? I probably am not eager to draft Drew Lock, but there is news today that Drew Lock has probably closing in on getting the starting job, which makes sense to me. He's a guy they invested draft capital in. They would like him to do well. I've seen the upside of him, right? We've all seen it, but the inconsistency has been horrible. So I'm probably not drafting him, maybe in a 2-quarterback league. But I think almost you force yourself by default to maybe add another quarterback, maybe add Teddy Bridgewater at some point as an additional quarterback, especially in 2-quarterback leagues. So if I was drafting him, it would be as a quarterback to a late-round flyer. Steve Linder, how are you, Steve? A familiar name from last season. All is well, by the way. In a keeper PPR 2-quarterback league, he's keeping Josh Allen with the first pick, number 5. Would I go Taylor or Eckler or go for a second quarterback, Lamar or Russell Wilson, depending on who's kept? Boy, if I had that starting point with Josh Allen, I'd feel pretty good about flexing the other way. And I think Taylor and or Eckler, I would go Taylor. I know there's some people that are concerned about Taylor, and I understand why the quarterback situation is concerned. I don't think that's ruinous for a running back. The offensive line issue, Quentin Nelson has the same foot issue or a similar foot issue to what Carson Wentz has. I think both of them Wentz and Nelson appear to be on the early side of the timetable, which would have them back. They'll be questionable best week 1. Eckler, I mean, there's something to like there, right? Going in with the offense, Joe Lombardi comes from the Saints, the offensive coordinator there. He's been an offensive assistant for the Saints the last year or two. And you would think that Eckler is ideally suited to the Alvin Kamara's type role, certainly the receiving aspect of that. And we all know Kamara has caught tons of passes, 80 at least every year, and he's been targeted at least 100 times every season except the one when he only got targeted 97 times. So I'd probably lean towards Taylor myself. I have Taylor ranked ahead of Eckler. I think it's close enough that I wouldn't talk you out of Eckler if that's the way you went. I know I've talked to people who believe Eckler is, capable of putting up a top 5 season. He's got to stay healthy. We haven't seen that yet. Taylor needs to continue doing what he did the last 5 games last year, right? And he will certainly be one of the top backs in the league. So I'd go in that direction, take my chances at quarterback coming around. Generally in a 2-quarterback league, I'm guessing it's a 12-team, Steve. So if that's the case, I'm probably want to come out of the top, come out around 4 with my second quarterback. Might stretch that's around 5, depending on the pace they're coming off. But I'm not going to wait too long. And look, both Lamar and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has been amazingly consistent. I think the only quarterback to throw at least 30 touchdowns in each of the last 4 years and has some good weapons around him. You just wonder, there's questions about the offense in our mind, right? We saw last year. We know Pete Carroll, Marcus Grant, our friend from NFL.com, always says, has told me, Russ wants to cook, but Pete Carroll likes the drive-through. And especially if there are games where Russell Wilson, we saw the 2 games where he combined for 7 interceptions or 7 turnovers. And that was a big deal, right? And Pete Carroll just dialed them right back. And so, that's always a concern in the back of my mind. That said, the numbers have been great. Russell Wilson has a super high floor, and he has those weeks he's capable of monster numbers, and we all know what Lamar is as well. So, it's tough call for me, but I'm in the first round. I'm going with the Taylor Eckler, one of those two, and I'm waiting on the quarterback a little bit. Throw any more questions you have out. Once again, if you could subscribe to the channel, that would be great. We would appreciate it. If you'd like to hit the like button, that helps the algorithms as well. And remember to go to footballdiehards.com and check out everything that's there and available to you. And prepare for this. I'm going to be here every week throughout the entire season. I'll try to do more of these, than what we normally do, leading through the exhibition season as we kind of try to sort out some of the names, some of the storylines and things that are going on, like who is going to start for New Orleans. Hi, Steve. I'm Bob. So I think it's dead even right now. It seems to be like nobody has taken control of that. It seemed like Jameis Winston was the favorite going in. Yeah, I got it. It seems like Jameis Winston was the favorite going in, and Taysom Hill is playing fairly. They're both playing. I think they're like neck and neck was what they're looked at right now. They both need to cut down on the turnovers. That's all right, Steve. Don't worry, man. They need to cut down on the turnovers, and that's going to be, I think, a thing going forward. If one of those guys is turning the ball over heavily, it's going to be an issue, right? Sean Payton's not going to have that. Jameis Winston, when he signed with the Saints, talked about they signed him for not a huge contract, right? He'd been a starting quarterback. And so when they signed him, he's basically said, this is me paying tuition at the university, right? To learn. And let's hope he learned from Drew Brees and from Sean Payton the issues of turning over the ball. My feeling is Jameis Winston is the guy that will be the starter, but this is something we have to watch. And either way, we have to be prepared. I think either of them are risky propositions. Taysom Hill could come in and have packages in the red zone situations that would limit Winston's numbers. The Michael Thomas situation could limit everyone's numbers. Taysom Hill could limit Alvin Kamara's numbers. Neither of those quarterbacks has the kind of history throwing to running backs that Drew Brees did. He threw 28% of his targets went to running backs. I mean, maybe that's a big part of that is the scheme, and Sean Payton will be responsible for that. But Jameis seems more like a chuck it down the field guy than a check down guy. So that's going to be an issue. But the short answer, Steve, is it's too close to call right now. I'm leaning Winston, but it could go either way. Robert Whiting wants to know why all the love for Jonathan Taylor, Mack, Wilkins, and Hines all risk to cut into his touches. To a degree, yeah. So I'm taking the final 5 games last year as kind of the direction it's heading. He's head and shoulders above where those other players are. I know Marlon Mack was fantastic in his first game against the Jaguars. And I love Hines as kind of a PPR, running back 5 for your fantasy team. He still catches a lot of passes. He'll still have big games as a receiver. But I'm looking at what Taylor's done and talking to people who cover the team on a daily basis. A lot of what I'm, basing my hunches and my expectations on are what the people with the eyes on the ground say. Look, they're not 100% accurate, right? We're all kind of guessing a little bit based on what we're seeing and what we learned last year. And that's kind of the thing. I want to, use a wide perspective when I'm looking at this. Part of that wide perspective is what happened at the tail end of last season when they were having great success running the ball with Jonathan Taylor. They're built to run. They put the investment in him. I don't know that Wilkins is really that much of a concern. I think he's more there for depth. But you're right about Hines for sure, and Mack is there as well. Any players I'm specifically targeting during drafts this year, or at least noticing you are taking on your teams? Thank you again for that question, Steve. Yes, I have tons of shares. So we talked about the free square players. If you haven't watched that video, go check it out. But a couple of players I like that I talked about in there are Marvin Jones Jr. in Jacksonville, but more so probably Phillip Lindsay. Both of those guys I have the most shares of in best ball leagues. Why? Because they're cheap, and I'm looking for maybe someone who can rise above expectations. In the case of Lindsay, well, he's listed as a starter, a co-starter with Mark Ingram. And now we're hearing the reporting from Sarah Barshop of ESPN and subsequently acknowledged by David Johnson himself that David Johnson is going to turn into Duke Johnson. he's not going to play the lead role. Now, might he at times play the lead role? Yeah, so did Duke Johnson. But it seems like the plan is for somebody else to play the lead role. Could that be Mark Ingram early on? It's possible. He has a relationship with David Culley. They were together in Baltimore. And maybe early on when Ingram is feeling fresh. I think maybe more Ingram is there for a little veteran leadership and somebody who does have a relationship with the head coach and can kind of help in the locker room and help on the field kind of get the, how the coach likes to do things, right? So Lindsey is a player who last year wasn't great playing with Melvin Gordon. He was a little bit beat up, but the previous 2 years of 1,000 yards per season. So I guess what the point is, if you're getting the cheapest portion of that thing or a cheap portion of that, and the price is rising on Lindsey, probably because of my big mouth partly. But if you're getting him at the right price, if he's your running back 4 or 5, you can move on if it's not working out. And that's the thing about free square players. And Marvin Jones, just quickly, the thing I like about him is he's familiar with the offensive scheme. He played in Detroit under Darrell Bevell. I think he's the only receiver with at least 9 touchdowns in each of the last 4 years. He's a good touchdown threat, maybe a little more of a possession receiver, but he has a good nose for the end zone. And look, DJ Chark is a work in progress. I have high hopes for him. I have heavily invested in Dynasty, but he's not quite there yet. And Laviska Shenault, we'll see if they can make use of all his playmaking ability. He's a very versatile threat, but so is Travis Etienne now. So that's a little bit of a concern for me with Shenault. And then a draft today I just did. I took Marvin Jones right after Shenault went. So he's going as the cheapest of those 3 wide receivers. I like doing that. Another one I like doing that with is Antonio Brown. Look, I like Chris Godwin. I like Mike Evans. They're fantastic. You're paying, wide receiver 1, borderline 2, probably closer to high end 2. Why not get the cheaper commodity that's Antonio Brown and look at it? He was the most heavily targeted player on the team the last 5 games last season. Again, I'm going back to last season, looking this off season. We see that all the starters are back. Maybe an addition of Gio Bernard is interesting, but Tom Brady didn't really he admitted he didn't really get the feel of the offense until the last, after they played Kansas City. I think it was week 12 is when he really hit stride. And so I think there's something to hang your hat on with Antonio Brown, as long as he doesn't get kicked out for fighting like he did today in practice. So those are a couple of the players. I mean, there's a lot of players. I'm trying to get a lot of Najee Harris earlier round, second round 2, if I can land him there. Looking for always clear paths to workload. Jeffrey Lehrer in our league, it's 2 PPR. We get PPR. We get a bonus for tight end scoring, which means that Kelsey, Waller, and Kittle all go in the first 2 rounds. If we get none of those, at what point do we get interested in tight ends again? And is that tight end Kyle Pitts? For a lot of people, it is Kyle Pitts. So, the history of rookie receivers is not great. Not a lot of it. I think Evan Engram was last, one that was really that ended up finishing with starting value as a fantasy commodity. Pitts seems like a unique character, right? My colleague on Sirius, Michael Fabiano, says he's either going to just live up to expectations or he's going to be a bust. Expectations are super high. I still like Mark Andrews ahead of him. I'm still taking TJ Hawkinson right in that range as well. I'm okay taking some chances on Pitts, but for me, that's because I'm in a lot of drafts and I want to diversify a little bit at some point. So in general, I've been going with one of the top 3, basically one of the top 2. If I don't get them, I punt and go all the way down to the bottom. And I think there's an argument to be made for waiting until later. But Pitts is a guy, Arthur Smith, the head coach now in Atlanta, formerly the offensive coordinator in Tennessee. One of the things that he's kind of known for is his creativity as a play caller and his use of, we saw tight ends. We saw like Jonnu Smith work out of the slot, work out of the backfield at times. So I'm sure you're going to see those same things with Pitts, who is a unique talent. So I think it's a little bit of a gamble. Also a gamble you can easily insure. As I mentioned, if I'm, not going early, I can wait till late. If you want to back him up with a solid play, you can still do that in case it's not working out. So it's just that investment you're making, whether it's, 4th, 5th, 6th round. I mean, I think that's kind of the range I see him going in, Kyle Pitts. I think that maybe you could be spending those resources in a better way. But if Pitts hits, I think he'll hit big. So I'm not against it. I haven't done it much. I've only done it in a few best balls because I'm starting to feel a little overweight on Andrews and Darren Waller and Travis Kelce when I get him in the first round. Roman Edmond, how are you, sir? Wentz is worth rostering, I think. So I think the foot issue kind of clouded this a little bit for me, right? I probably stopped investing when that happened, but I think up to that point, I was investing because I mean, so sometimes I talk about this. We can tell ourselves a happy story about a player, especially a player we're not paying a premium for. In Wentz's case, you're not paying a premium. So what's the happy story? Well, he was nearly an MVP level quarterback last time he played with Frank Reich as his coordinator in Philadelphia. He comes to that same coach who knows how to use him, has gotten a fair amount out of quarterbacks, like Phillip Rivers. I mean, it wasn't horrible for him. And previous to that, he's gotten a fair amount out of quarterbacks. So, I mean, I think that's the case you make. The foot injury did cloud it, but I think it just drove the price down. And so, especially if you're like, in a deeper draft and you want to take a quarterback 3 at the end, why not? I still have him as my quarterback 2 in a handful of leagues before the foot injury, and I'm feeling increasingly confident. I talked about it at the top of the session here. It looks like he's going to be closer to the early end. He's already back on the field. He's been taking mental reps, apparently doing the dropbacks, moving around, going through the motion of throwing the ball. Has the earpiece in, paying attention, engaged with with Jacob Eason and Sam Ellinger. So I think he is worth rostering, Roman. And I think sharp player like you would probably be doing that. Jose Marina, keep Keenan Allen or Antonio Gibson in a PPR league. I'm guessing you're not mentioning there's a price associated with them, so I'm keeping Antonio Gibson. If it is, if there's a round value associated with him, go ahead and put that in the chat. It's interesting about Antonio Gibson. The talk this week that they would like him to, Kyle Allen, the reserve quarterback, said the coaching staff would like to move him into a kind of a Christian McCaffrey type role. That would be a huge increase in touches for Antonio Gibson. There's also people there in Washington questioning whether he's ready for that role. Remember, he's a converted wide receiver. Last year was his first year, back as a running back. I thought he looked great, especially against Dallas on Thanksgiving. I thought he showed a lot of promise. Then the toe injury was issued down the stretch. So no round value. Yeah, so I'm keeping Antonio Gibson. So been talking to Mike Clay a lot from ESPN a lot, and great mind for projections. I mean, we're always trying to find the next big thing. He thinks the range of possible outcomes for Gibson is running back 1, as in the running back 1. I mean, admittedly, that's not the most likely outcomes, but I don't know that it's not within the range. If Washington's a team that's going to play a really tough defense and maybe run the ball heavily, use him more as a receiver. Talk to J.P. Finley of NBC Washington a couple of weeks ago, and he's been watching this closely, and he said, I think I talked to him 2 weeks ago. That was the first time that he saw, it was a Sunday practice. I talked to him after that practice. It was the first time he saw what the Washington calls it the turbo set, which is their passing down kind of hurry up scheme. And instead of J.D. McKissick, it was Gibson in there. And that's what it's going to take, right? For his numbers to go up, they've got to expand that role. So you hear that little tidbit, you throw in what Kyle Allen said. I think there's a lot of upside there. Also, the running back, it's a little more scarce there. So I'm on board with that. Love Keenan Allen. Don't have a problem with him, but they've added some weapons there too. And there's some talk of Mike Williams playing maybe more of the X receiver role, the one that Michael Thomas played in this offense, in New Orleans. It's a similar offense to what the Saints ran that Joe Lombardi's bringing over with him. So that's kind of the theory there. I'm leaning Gibson. Tutor review. I am well. Thank you. You're in a 14-team league, half-point PPR, picking the 6th slot. It's between Nick Chubb and Aaron Jones for me. What are your thoughts? Thanks. So I'm kind of a Nick Chubb guy, but I mean, there's something to be said for Aaron Jones, right? It's easy to overlook what he's done. 1,500 total yards from scrimmage in each of the 2 seasons under Matt LaFleur. Has heavy usage. His numbers have gone up when Jamal Williams has not been available. Also, Jamal Williams is no longer on the team. Use him a little more heavily as a pass catcher. I think the half-point PPR, it's still a relative thing, right? If, it's additional points. And so the same players that I'm targeting in a PPR, I'm tending to target in a half-point PPR because it's a relative value. So I lean Chubb a little bit. And I think if if you want to talk yourself out of that, you talk about Kareem Hunt. I know they came out today, the running backs coach, Stump Mitchell, said today that he thinks both backs are capable of 1,000 yards. We know what Kevin Stefanski wants to do. He wants to run the ball, make a few plays down the field. They just paid Nick Chubb a heck of a lot of money. I think 3 years, $36 million. So I'm leaning Chubb. This one's pretty close. Your mileage may vary. I wouldn't talk you out of Aaron Jones. Like him an awful lot, but Chubb for me. Walter Sick, I guess that says. 10-team half-point PPR. You had the 10th spot. You went Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, and passed on D. Adams and T. Hill. Please tell me I made the right choice. You made a choice I would often make, right? I think for me, and look, I know there are people who like view this totally differently. I told you I was in, some drafts recently with Andy Behrens, and there are other people who do this kind of a zero RB or modified zero RB. I'm not one of those people. I see how they do it. I watch the roster construction. It concerns me a little bit. I'm a clear path to workload person. I think that the people who draft guys like Jonathan Taylor, I know, and I'm not denying what was said earlier that there are other backs in Indianapolis, right? Naheem Hines is certainly going to have a role. We'll see what Marlon Mack does. He had a huge role, against Jacksonville before he was hurt, right? But I think that was more of the rookie trying to work his way up to speed. One of the things about rookie running backs, Mike Clay, another thing he talks about is how second-year backs tend to establish themselves a little more because they get a better feel for pass protection, and that's key. In the league where you're paying quarterbacks $500 million, said Patrick Mahomes, you want to protect that quarterback. So anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent a little bit. I love Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris. Both backs, to me, have clear paths to workloads. You could make the argument, given the people also on the roster, that Najee Harris's role and the history of Mike Tomlin, right? I mean, we can all go all the way back to running the wheels off Fast Willie Parker. He prefers to have one back handle the bulk of the workload, right? So, so I like those guys, and like I love Devontae Adams. I think he's a first-round pick. I think Tyreek Hill is there as well, but I think in a 10-team league, I don't think this is a horrible thing. You're going to find plenty of depth at wide receiver. At least I do. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I go running back and include tight ends in the mix in that situation in all formats, right? Whether it's 10-team, 12-team, even 14-team. I might hammer the running backs even a little harder to 14. But I think there's value at wide receiver all the way down the list. And I talked about those free square players. I mean, you look at some of the teams' wide receiver ones that are going at or after the double-digit rounds begin. You're talking about guys like Corey Davis. Look, I don't have high hopes for Corey Davis. I just think he's going to be the lead piece of that Jets offense that's probably going to have to be throwing the ball a fair amount. You could look at Henry Ruggs. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be good. He wasn't last year, but the investment in him suggests they need him to be better. So, again, these are for the price. For the price you're paying, I think there is some upside. And, again, telling yourself a happy story, I'm pretty good at that. Also can tell myself sad stories, though. But anyway, you made the choice I would make. We'll find out if it's right or not, Walter. Kevin O'Brien, looking forward to another great year myself. What rookie quarterback are you most confident in being fantasy relevant this year? Well, it's going to be Trevor Lawrence because he's I know the Jaguars haven't and he's a really good player. They've got a lot of weapons around him. Defense, wasn't great last year. Hopefully they have to throw the ball a lot. Zach Wilson, I'm a little concerned. I have maybe higher hopes than some other people. The Jets' history of doing horrible things with quarterbacks is not lost on me. Then again, I look at the things they've done. They're building that offensive line with Mekhi Becton and Elijah Vera-Tucker on that, forming that duo on one side. They've added some explosive playmaking threats for him. So I'm still not diving into that one. And I think we all agree, if Trey Lance gets on the field, if Justin Fields get on the field, I mean, they have a lot of upside. I see in the last two drafts I've been in, last handful of drafts I've been in, Trey Lance has gone incredibly early, just people making a speculative play. And that's something we talk about a lot of football diehards. It's something that a lot of, veteran fantasy players, it's what a lot of people do. You draft your upside quarterback early, invest the draft capital there, because there's going to be a steady Eddie, we call them, a quarterback available later that's, has a more reliable role, whether it's a Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield or Matt Ryan or whoever, right? So you jump a little bit on the up-and-coming commodity. And I think Trey Lance is getting that treatment. Maybe Justin Fields should get it too, because he has maybe a clearer path to workload. The problem for me with Trey Lance, and I don't know if it's a problem, I still think it's a reasonable speculative play, but if the 49ers are a playoff team, right? If they're built to win, they just need the quarterback play. If Jimmy Garoppolo is playing as he has in the past when healthy, I don't see them changing just to change. If they're winning, they're going to stick with what they have and groom Trey Lance. They're going to have some packages for him, and I think you'll see him on the field. But to get the full workload, I think we've got to count on Jimmy Garoppolo either getting hurt or playing horribly. The getting hurt seems much more likely, right? But that's something. And Justin Fields, I expect him to be on the field probably by October. I know fans in Chicago would like to see him sooner. I don't know if I want to throw him in against the Rams in Week 1, but it could happen. So I think he's also another one of those guys. So I think Trevor Lawrence for me, then probably Lance, then probably Fields. I think they're neck and neck. If you want to play the safer play, it's Fields. And then after that, you get down to like the Wilson level. All right. All starting quarterbacks and all the rookies. This is Robert Whiting again. All starting quarterbacks and all the rookie quarterbacks promptly snatched up in my 22-round best ball draft. If you had to take a flyer on a non-rookie backup quarterback, which one would I take and why? Oh, wow. Wow. I'm trying to think of who's in danger of not holding their starting job. I'm trying to look at who's got the any issues. I don't see a ton of issues. I think most of the starters are pretty secure. I think, take a chance on whoever's not starting for New Orleans, because I think it could be 50-50. You could say the same about Denver. And who gets hurt? Like maybe Marcus Mariota, a guy who could get traded for. If he's not playing, if Derek Carr remains in locked and upright position, there's been talk of that already, in past years even. So, and the contract kind of makes it demanding. So he might be one that I would look at as well. I'm gonna have to look at my rankings and just double check. Maybe I'm overlooking somebody. Because that's a good question. I mean, I find myself at that point. I've got to take a flyer on somebody. Maybe you look at the Colts quarterbacks. I mean, Jacob Eason, but you kind of don't know who that's going to be, right? Dwayne Haskins, maybe a reasonable play. Looks like he's going to lock down that number 2 job. Jacoby Brissett with Miami. I don't think they want to make a change. Maybe Taylor Heineke. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think he's pretty well locked in as a starter. I think they want him to be the starter. I think we've seen him not remain the starter before. So those would be some of the guys I'd be looking at. Jennifer Bach loves the show, and in a 10-team, 2-quarterback keeper league, can keep 2 Devontae Adams in the first round, 8 spot, Aaron Rodgers in 5, just J.K. Dobbins in 7, or Mark Andrews in the 10th. Which 2 would you keep? Well, you're not getting any value on Devontae Adams, but I might still keep him, right? And you can make a really good argument for keeping Aaron Rodgers in a 2-quarterback league. That might be the direction I go. I love Mark Andrews in the 10th, which is a crazy value. But I think in these circumstances, since it is a 10-team league, I'm probably going to go with the battery mates and keep Devontae Adams without much discount, right? Maybe even overpaying a little bit in a 10-team league. And I'm going to go with Rodgers and take my chances on getting those other positions. So Mr. Shadow wants to know if I would recommend reading the literature and stat sheets, or is all that info taken into account in the rankings and tiers? Yes, it is. Also, I would read all that stuff. Look, I mean, you can. So the whole idea behind this, what we're trying to do, is give you the information you need to be the best informed manager in your league at any point in time. Part of that is on you. How much time do you have, right? What's your effort level? We also have the My Fantasy GM, which will help you manage your teams and maybe help you with your time management as well. I read everything. I want to read everything. I want to understand the reasoning behind everything for me. But I realize everyone doesn't have that time. So if not, yes, all that info is taken into account in my rankings in the tiers. Walter, again, thank you. Appreciate it. I grabbed J.K. Dobbins 3rd round, then Mike Evans, Cortland Sutton. I like Sutton and Galladay a little bit. I think they're a little undervalued. I know there are question marks about certainly Galladay and that offense. Cortland Sutton, though, and I know he's not quite up to full speed, but I keep going back to what our Ryan O'Halloran of the Denver Post told me last summer, is that Cortland Sutton was the best player on the field every single practice for the Broncos. I mean, by far. So like that an awful lot. So I like those guys. Brandon Cooks, I think, is a player who I think is another one of those. He's not a free square, but he's a reasonably priced square. I suspect the Texans will be playing from behind a lot, and Tyrod Taylor can throw the football. So yes, I agree with that. A lot of value in late and mid round wide receivers. Matt Huizenga. I hope I said that right. I'm pronouncing it like I've seen it before. Who is an RB going in the 8th round or later that you see the most value in? 10 teams, 1 PPR. And the 10 team, look, I mean, I think I like players like James Conner, I think is a reasonable value in Arizona. I don't know what Chase Edmonds is going to be. I think he gets the lead role to start out, but does he keep it? It's a high volume offense. They had a lot of goal to go carries for Kenyon Drake last year. Does Chase Edmonds get those or does James Conner get those? I think at the price you're paying is a reasonable value. I talked about Philip Lindsay earlier, now with Houston. I mean, at the end of the season, I'm going to be surprised if he's not the most 8th round James Robinson. Yes, that's a value. So just saw a report. If you go to the footballdiehards.com website, check the August update. I have all these updates rolling through constantly. And John Shipley from SI.com made a pretty good case that, look, Robinson is still the locked in running back one there. He was in early in that first game when Trevor Lawrence was on the field. Probably an indication they trust him a little bit in pass protection. And also he got most of the carries in that first series when all the starters were in. So, but I think there's a lot of running backs that have some value in a 10-team league going that late. I mean, if I was going to dive in a little bit, I mean, there are players I like. I can find players I like at every price point, right? But I mean, we talked about it. You'll see Zach Moss and Devin Singletary going late. Look, I don't feel good about drafting them, but also I'll draft them when the price is right. I've mentioned Nyheim Hines in PPR leagues. I think he's a good play. Giovanni Bernard is a guy way later probably that I'm pretty keen on. The GM there, his name's Tom Brady. Okay, I'm just kidding. But also Tom Brady probably wanted him there because we had the most drops among running backs we saw from the combination of Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones. And Tom Brady likes throwing the ball to his running back, and they like to throw the ball in general. I saw a comment the other day by one of the local observers, basically, watch out for him to have a big role on passing downs. Also, for Tampa Bay, every down is a passing down. Bruce Arians talked about it today, said he sees a big role for Giovanni Bernard. So I find that interesting as well. So late round play for sure. B Price 25. Hello. 10-team PPR keeper question. Keeping Derrick Henry for a 4th round pick? Damn right you are. Deciding between Ridley in the 3rd or McLaurin in the 8th. I'm taking McLaurin in the 8th. Maybe I can still get Ridley back, maybe at a better price. I don't know, 10-team. And how many people are being held all together? It looks like 2 per team. So 20 guys. You might still be able to get him back, maybe even a better value. So that's the way I'm going. Wouldn't talk you out of Ridley. I mean, I think that's about That's about what you're paying. I think Ridley or McLaurin in the 8th is a super value. I know John Kime from ESPN is really, talking up McLaurin. And I've seen some other people as well, just expecting a huge year. If you remember last year, the quarterback play wasn't great. McLaurin playing on 2 sprained ankles, still pretty productive, right? And so if you think of this year, they've bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick. They have Curtis Samuel, who maybe isn't like getting up to speed as fast as they wanted. He's been missing time, but he also is a 4-3 kind of player. You put that opposite McLaurin, and he's also one of those super fast guys that's going to open things up a little bit. So I'm pretty keen on McLaurin as well. So I think that 8th round price is a discount that I would love. Also, I love discounts, so keep that in mind. If you don't like them as much, I wouldn't talk you out of Ridley. D. Langmeyer, auction keeper question, 10-team, half point, $100 budget. Metcalf for 4 or Taylor for 11? I'm probably keeping Taylor for 11. Metcalf's a screaming price, though. I wouldn't, again, I know which direction I'm going. Taylor for 1/10 of my budget seems really reasonable, or right about that. I did pronounce it correctly. Look at me go. It's almost like I knew what I was doing. Miss All You. Oh, wow. Okay. Matt, that's great. So appreciate everyone. If you have more questions, throw them on in there. I'll stick around for a little while here. I generally like to do this as long as I have questions, and otherwise no one wants to hear me just talk aimlessly about things that they don't want to hear about. But I'm here for that. I will talk aimlessly about anything at the drop of a hat. Want to talk a little bit about the Kings Classic again, and the FF Expo Bob Lung put on. Really great time. A lot of people there. Way more than I would have expected. Some of the great people in the industry that we got to hang out with. Really good time. But the drafts were very illustrative, 14-team drafts. Running backs, again, are very heavy. But you see, Gordon on a contract here. I like Javonte Williams. Walter Sick is asked about Javonte Williams or Melvin Gordon. I think I just put it up, or I'm about to just put it up, a update from another local observer on that situation. Um, so here's the thing: the Broncos traded up to get Williams. Melvin Gordon, older. Granted, he's still, got something left in the tank, but he had some off-field issues this year. He's, this is going to be it for him. I think if Williams, and this is another thing that Ryan O'Halloran from the Denver Post and I have talked about on multiple occasions, and I'll tell you this, O'Halloran's kind of dialed back a little bit. When he talked to him shortly after the draft, he thought there was no way that Javonte Williams wouldn't be the starter as long as he demonstrates the ability to pick up the offense in training camp. Well, he's done that. He's got an opportunity to do that. Mike Boone is out with a quad injury. Melvin Gordon missing time with a groin injury. If you saw the first preseason game, Williams looked great. Has all the earmarks of a 3-down back. For me, it would be Javonte Williams. I'm drafting him ahead of Melvin Gordon, and this is kind of is it a little bit risky? Sure. I think maybe Melvin Gordon does have a role, maybe more of a role early on than he does as the season progresses. Also, maybe we get a little bit out in front of our skis on some of these rookie players and put too much hope on them in the draft capital expended, and they aren't always up for it. Pass protection is going to be a key. If Williams can demonstrate pass protection, this is the key for all the rookie running backs. But I like him better than Melvin Gordon right now. First time doing a dynasty, huge Bears fan. What round is too early for Fields? You're being a Bears fan should have nothing to do with it. And so in a super flex 10 team, look, I wouldn't mind taking a shot on him. I kind of look for the tier, and I've seen him go in some recent drafts fairly early. So again, if it's a 10 team, you can have 3 quarterbacks pretty easily, have 3 starters on your roster if you work it out right. I would say you have permission to go a little earlier than his ADP. I'd have to look it up for that league. I've been watching recently. I mean, I wouldn't go too much ahead of the double-digit rounds, but if you're in a Chicago league or, it's a local league in Chicago, you're probably going to have to reach for him. So I would go out and check ADP on that type of draft. It is available out there, and see what round, and jump a round or 2 ahead to make sure you get him. Robert Kirsting, 10-man PPR keeper league, 9th pick overall. Henry in the 4th or Josh Allen in the 8th. Henry is a no value. I would take Henry in the 4th as well. Again, in a 10-team league, I think that's a little easier of a decision. I love Josh Allen. I think he's my quarterback too. Probably most everyone's quarterback too, with an argument that he could be quarterback 1, right, because of his rushing ability. So, but still, Henry in the 4th is hard for me to pass up on. Running back the position of scarcity, or at least feature backs with a Henry-like role. I can't say this username. Brodeur 30, Cujo 31. Whom to keep? 12-man Yahoo League, 0.05 PPR, Justin Herbert or James Robinson. In this case, look, I don't know what Robinson's role is. How long do you keep them? Is this a single year of keeping, or can you keep them beyond? If you can keep them beyond, that makes it a pretty easy question, right? It's Justin Herbert. You bet, Robert. It's Justin Herbert. But for just 1 year, it's probably still Justin Herbert for me. I think James Robinson looks like he's locked in as a starter, but they did draft Travis Etienne. Etienne seems like the home run threat that maybe Urban Meyer will like at some point. It's 1 year. That makes it tougher, right? Because I think it's 12-man though. So this is really close. I'm probably keeping Herbert and taking my chances at running back. I have Herbert as my quarterback 6, and James Robinson not in my top 2 tiers of running backs. It's still tough. I'm still torn over this one, but I'm probably keeping Herbert. Kevin O'Brien, leagues are PPR only, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 quarterback required with 4 flex. That's interesting. Passing TDs are 6 points. This takes pressure off getting 2 running backs early, but you're more likely to wait on QB. So is it a 10-team or is this a 12-team? I mean, I think that's a big difference maker for me when it comes to quarterbacks. In 10-team leagues, I'm probably like all the way dialed back on this. On the quarterback, right? I'm not pushing. I'm not pushing the quarterback as hard. In 12-team league, I might push a little harder. And I'm guessing this isn't a super flex. You have to use the positions wide receiver. Yeah, you said that. So I'd dial back on quarterback a little bit. I'd be fine with that. Late round quarterback's not an issue for me in this type of league. And it's a 10-team, so that even adds to it, Kevin. Walter back, opinions on CEH. Do you see him having a better season than last year? I do. And so for a number of reasons. Number one, what we talked about a little earlier is, the second-year running backs tend to make some progress, right? There were things that I was surprised at about Edwards-Helaire's rookie season. Number one, they didn't use him as a receiver. Was that because he couldn't pass block? Again, I mentioned, when you have a $500 million quarterback, and the Chiefs do, you want to be able to protect them. I mean, he wasn't a $500 million quarterback then, but that's part of it, right? And so we all got very excited when Damian Williams opted out. The ADP rocket was strapped to Edwards-Helaire's ass, and he shot right into the middle of the first round. I think maybe our expectations were a little skewed, more so than his performance. But still, I thought they would use him more as a receiver. I thought he would be better as a runner near the goal line. He was not either of those things. I'm hoping he's better at both those things. They have upgraded the offensive line. He's in his second season. Andy Reid has talked about in the last few days even how they expect him to make a huge jump this year. I expect him to as well, and I think the price is a little more realistic this season, that mid-second round in a 12-team league. Thank you, Brodeur 30, Cujo 31. I'd like to know more about that username, sir, or ma'am, whatever the case might be. And yes, that's good, Kevin. All right. Fire me off some more questions. I'm here. I have your back. In the meantime, hit the like button if you're here watching. Use the subscribe feature so you get all the notifications and whatnot for all these chats. We'll be doing a lot of this stuff. Again, I mentioned we had the free square video, value play video we did for the site. So that's on the site as well, or on the YouTube channel. Check it out. The footballdiehards.com YouTube channel is here for you as well. Lots of video content coming. Also, the website, footballdiehards.com. We have tons of content there, a constant stream of news updates coming up, rankings, configurable cheat sheets, ranking matrices. We have IDP. We have everything you need, tons of articles, various content. Emo Cavalick's draft plan is available for you. And when you get into the season, use our draft simulator to get you there. You can sit there and work through drafts. I know mock drafts aren't a big thing anymore. One of the reasons why is these draft simulators that are very helpful and allow you to do a draft really quick. Tons of content in terms of articles, including some early DFS articles with the initial values already out and available. So tons of stuff. Go check it out, footballdiehards.com. Order up, buy a magazine while you're there, the Fantasy Football Pro Forecast in our 32nd year of publication. That's a long time. I'm old, and that's been around the entire time. All right, thank you. Second overall pick, leaning towards Dalvin Cook. So am I. I concur. Look, I think, in the drafts I've done, and I've done a lot of drafts, probably 50 plus, I guess, would be the total at this point. I've seen Christian McCaffrey not go first overall a small handful of times. Not many times. Probably single digits, one hand. I can count on one hand. I've seen Dalvin Cook go second overall almost every single draft. I could probably count the times he has not on one hand. So I'm all about that. I think the workload, and I know they've changed offensive coordinators in Minnesota. The good news is they changed from a Kubiak to a Kubiak. I think we're going to have some continuity there. And Cook's just got to stay healthy. We all know this, just like Christian McCaffrey, just like Saquon Barkley, just like Alvin Kamara, just like any guy you're drafting in the top half of the first round. So there you have that. If y'all don't listen to the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio or the SiriusXM NFL Radio, you'll find me there on occasion. And those occasions are usually 5 or 6 nights a week. The Football Die Hard Show available right now on Saturday and Sunday from 7 to, what time am I on? 5 to 7 Eastern time. I've got to figure out my times in my head. Monday night, Football Diehards is on from 10 to midnight Eastern time. You'll find me on Fantasy Dirt with Michael Fabiano multiple nights a week as well, or at least one night a week or more. And then as we get into the season, you'll be able to catch Football Diehards 2 double dips on Saturdays this year. We're going to be doing the 5 to 7 that we're doing right now on Saturday. And then on NFL Radio, we'll jump over from 8 to 11. We'll do another 3 hours there. So tons of stuff. Mike Dempsey and myself when I'm not doing that. And Sunday mornings, the pregame show, myself and Jeff Manns on Sirius XM. Fantasy Sports Radio, it'll be a great time. Favorite late round tight ends between Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Gronk, Ingram, Troutman, etc. I've been firing a lot of the fish missile. We're hanging your hat, so he's like for me, a later round. I see his ADP rising, and I find him less appealing at that point. I think he caught 15 passes last year, but he did on 16 targets. I mean, he's pretty good. He's kind of athletic, seam splitter that they like to use in this offense. So I think any of those guys in the range, I'm kind of dialed back on Gronk a little bit. And maybe I shouldn't be. I mean, he had some big weeks. Maybe in best ball I like him more. But I think Smith and Henry, the worry is they kind of cancel themselves out. Or do they? I mean, we've seen the Patriots make pretty effective use of two tight ends in the past, and they obviously went out and targeted these guys in free agency and spent a hell of a lot of money. By the way, if you're not watching, the game is cranked up here. The Patriots and Eagles getting underway here. I think it's about to start. So we'll get a little look at that as well. But yeah, and by the way, Smith and Henry are both beat up already. So Ingram's a guy, man. Last year, if he had not had all the drops, I think he led the position in drops, and he also had some issues with I think certainly every one of the Giants, but I think it was league wide. He had as many passes intercepted, targeted to him than anybody in the league. So that's a concern. But I think all these guys are reasonable flyers in the late round. If I'm going that late, I might be waiting later. I like Irv Smith in that range. He's a little before those guys. But I'm like Eric Ebron's like tight end 26 right now. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with Dan Arnold too, but I'm crazy. Definitely worth listening on Next Time with you and Dempsey and UFF. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I hope you're all listening. And again, we'll be cranking up the podcast too on footballdiehards.com. So you'll have that, all the video content. We'll have our usual pregame videos every Sunday and a variety of things, my injury videos on Saturday. So check all that out. I guess we'll get ready for the game now, everybody. I appreciate you coming by, asking the questions. I'll do it again. Watch your email for notifications. If you're on Twitter, we put out notifications there as well. If you hit your notification bell, you get notifications there too. Thank you for your time and the questions. Love interacting with you all. Look forward to doing a lot more of it going forward. And for now, I got one more question from Brian Price. Picking ninth. I was just wrapping it up, Brian. Sorry. I'm not going to answer. Nah, just kidding. I'm going to answer. Picking ninth overall in my 10-team league. Looks like I'll have a combo of Aaron Jones, Chubb, Kelsey, Hopkins, T. Hill, Ridley available. Already keeping Henry McLaurin. I'm taking Kelsey at that point. Even in a 10-team, given the players you already have. And then I come back in the second round. And any of those guys that are available, whether it's Chubb, Hopkins, Tyreek Hill. Even if I have Kelsey on my roster, I'm probably okay with Tyreek Hill on it as well. But you could pivot to Ridley or someone else or Hopkins. Both going to be heavily targeted. Both have high upsides. I know Mike Dempsey, my colleague on Sirius, believes Ridley is going to finish in the top 5, be a wide receiver 3 for him. So within the range of possible outcomes. So so I think I'd go Kelsey in that regard and take my chances. Any of those players come back around to me, I probably like them in the order you have them, except Chubb first, then Jones. And maybe in a PPR league, you could reverse that if you wanted. But I think that's about the direction I'd go. Hill ahead of Hopkins, and I'd take Hopkins ahead of Ridley. So there you have it. Thank you all once again. We will see you next time. I'm sure I'll be doing this in the next few days. So once again, watch for the notifications. I'm Bob Harris. Go to footballdiehards.com.